Even given everything we have seen so far, it would still be a staggering development. Tonight, the former leader of the free world claims he is about to be charged with conspiring to overturn the 2020 election.
He is the biggest danger to the American democracy since the American Civil War. So imagine somebody like Donald Trump getting power again, and it'll be an anger-based power, it'll be a vengeful power.
Imperfect as it may be, America has been a standard bearer for freedom down the centuries. So to see its former leader potentially charged with trying to overturn an election he clearly lost would still be quite a shock. Dan and Robert will join us from Washington and Miami. Also on News at 10 tonight. The shocking equal pay scandal that could cost Asda more than £1 billion.
I'm still not getting equal pay. I'm still being treated like a second-class citizen. I'm still having to fight for my right as a woman, and that's not fair.
Another day of frightening scenes from Beijing as the government there battles floodwater. Lauren James helps England thrash China to guarantee a place in the knockout stages. The all-new air mail on Orkney, and the brilliant musician who learned to play the French horn with his toes.
I'm a little tired of people telling me what is not possible. I love to think about more what is possible.
This is ITV News at 10 with Tom Bradby.
Good evening. Donald Trump has already made history and achieved notoriety by becoming the first president to be charged with a crime. Two, in fact. In the next few minutes, we expect, according to the man himself at least, that to rise to three, with the most serious charge yet, attempting to block the transfer of power to Joe Biden in January 2021 with the storming of the US Capitol building. Mr. Trump has said on his social media account that he will be indicted at 10 o'clock our time. So right about now, we'll go to Dan in a febrile Washington just as soon as we have some details on that indictment. But here's a report Dan put together on the background that brought us to this point.
It was a pivotal moment in the history of America.
USA! USA!
The attempted insurrection on January the 6th, 2021, pushed the United States close to a precipice. The violence unleashed at the Capitol has already resulted in dozens of criminal convictions. But now the man many think was responsible for this riot is about to face the consequences for his words and actions.
We fight like hell, and if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore.
This latest federal case won't just centre on January the 6th. It will also prosecute a complex plot to use fake electors in an attempt to steal the result from Joe Biden, a conspiracy which many think started the day after the election. Donald Trump is now facing three separate legal battles. One in New York relating to hush money payments to an adult actress, another in Miami relating to withholding classified documents, and now this case, perhaps the most serious, relating to his attempts to steal the 2020 election and the January 6th riots which followed. It is a sensational turn of events, especially when you remember that Donald J. Trump is the leading Republican candidate for the next election. He'll simultaneously be fighting for the White House and for his liberty. Anthony Scaramucci worked for Donald Trump for 11 days before being fired and is now one of his most ardent critics.
I'm not surprised by the indictments. I think what I'm surprised by is the staying power of President Trump. I'm surprised that he still wants to do this. His family is out of the picture. They really don't want anything to do with it. And it just strikes me as very odd that he wants to pursue this again. It's almost like this, we're watching a full-on Shakespearean tragedy with this wild manifestation of ego that's absorbing everything. He's almost like a black hole for ego, so it's a full gravitational pull of ambition that we're watching, and it's somewhat sad.
What kind of danger does he represent for American democracy, do you think?
Well, I would say that he is the biggest danger to the American democracy since the American Civil War. So imagine somebody like Donald Trump getting power again, and it'll be an anger-based power, it'll be a vengeful power. I think that you will see an impairment of the democracy. Now, the good news is he would have 4 years to deconstruct the democracy. It's not enough time to do permanent damage, but he could easily help a successor get in there and really run rampage.
The Department of Justice's special counsel, Jack Smith, has amassed huge amounts of evidence against Donald Trump, both in the Miami documents case and now in this latest election case, details of which will emerge in the coming days. Donald Trump is expected to fight the charges. The case may last for many months. Potentially now, Donald Trump could be running for election while denying he attempted to rig the last one. It is a situation without precedent and will test the very foundations of American democracy.
Well, as I said at the start, we're joined from Dan, by even Dan in Washington and Robert in Florida to talk about this pretty fast-moving development tonight. Dan, maybe I can come to you first. There's been speculation about this all evening. As we said at the top, it happened just as we were going on air. So what exactly has happened?
Well, I must stress at the moment we're waiting for an official announcement by the special counsel, Jack Smith, from the Department of Justice. So nothing officially has been announced yet, but I think it's a racing certainty. It will now happen very, very soon. We understand that the grand jury that's been deliberating whether there's enough evidence to push forward an indictment have been sent home for the day, but their foreman has remained, suggesting perhaps that this is the final procedural moment when the foreman will formally hand down this indictment, and we will then hear from Jack Smith himself. Now, Donald Trump has put something out on social media in the last few minutes saying, "I hear that deranged Jack Smith, in order to interfere with the presidential election of 2024, will be putting out another fake indictment of your favourite president, me, at 5 p.m, which is now. Why didn't they do this 2.5 years ago? Why did they wait so long? Because they wanted to put it right in the middle of my campaign. Prosecutorial misconduct," he says. So he's clearly gone straight on the attack. In terms of the charges that he may face, well, we don't know yet because we haven't got the details, but the kind of things he may face are conspiracy to defraud the US, deprivation of rights, which is normally used when police are abusing their position, for example, obstruction of an official proceeding, and most seriously, insurrection, all connected, of course, to those incredible events that Robert, my colleague, witnessed here at the building behind me on January the 6th, 2021.
OK, Dan, thank you very much. Well, Robert, can I put that to you? You were there on that day. You were in the building on that day. We discussed these events a million times in the aftermath of that extraordinary election night. What do you make of today?
Well, look, the great paradox, almost the absurdity of American politics is this latest indictment that's coming down in the next few minutes potentially changes everything about the 2024 election, but also possibly changes nothing. The latest polling just over the last 24 hours show that Joe Biden and Donald Trump are tied at 43%. Now, it is true that Donald Trump's favorability ratings are just 41%, but Joe Biden's approval rating is even less at 39%. And I think what this latest indictment really represents and sets the scene for is a canvas of chaos in 2024, with the political and the legal calendars absolutely colliding. I mean, the federal case here in Miami is scheduled to go ahead in May 2024, just weeks before the Republican Party convention. So it's entirely possible, even likely, that the Republican nominee for president won't just be an indicted figure by then, he'll also be convicted. And into the middle of this sort of red-hot election season is going to now be this January the 6th case. And just imagine how that plays out in a divided country, with Donald Trump amplifying the charge that the entire judicial system has been weaponized against him. I mean, Thomas, you and I have spoken about before, it is entirely likely that Donald Trump's best chance of avoiding prison is to actually win the White House.
Robert, sometimes we discuss these things and it's honestly hard to believe that it's real. But there we are. It is. Thank you very much indeed for now. We'll leave it there and perhaps come back to you if there are more developments whilst we're on air. Now, let's go on to other news. And it is obvious, you might say, isn't it? In this day and age, men and women need to be paid the same for work of equal value. And yet we can reveal tonight an independent report has suggested female workers at one of the country's major employees, the supermarket group Asda, may not be getting the same pay as men for the same kind of work. The equal pay case is due to come to court next year. If Asda were to lose, some of those female staff would be in line for back payments of £23,000 each, costing Asda £1.2 billion. And of course, if the women of Asda were to win, other retailers may have to follow suit.
I felt degraded. I felt that I'd been ill-treated.
Checkout worker Jackie remembers finding out that mainly men working in Asda's depots were earning significantly more than her.
There's girls that I work with going to food banks. They've come to me for help with debt.
Michelle, who works in a different role on the shop floor, remembers how she felt too.
Anger and frustration. I can't even afford to shop at the place I work.
These women are among 53,000 claimants in a huge equal pay case against Asda, arguing wages in the stores should match those in the depots. In Poole, Jackie says she's worth more than £11.11 an hour.
When the equal pay went through, it was 1975. I was 15. And I'm still not getting equal pay. I'm still being treated like a second-class citizen. I'm still having to fight.
It's an equal pay claim because it's mainly men in Asda's depots, earning between £1.50 and £3 more an hour. But Michelle argues the jobs are comparable.
They are putting the products onto pallets to take to shops. Obviously, when it gets to shops, it's a role reversal. We take the products off the pallets to put on shelves.
We understand that the court commissioned an independent expert to look at the question at the heart of this equal pay battle. Are the jobs on Asda's shop floor of equal value to those in the distribution centre? The findings are confidential, but we've seen an email that suggests they could be helpful to the claimant's case.
The leaked message that has not come from anyone seen in this report was sent to all claimants by their legal team and says the store roles and those in the depots were compared by being marked in 11 areas, including things like knowledge, physical demands and working conditions. To give you a sense of the overall report, they say, the average score for all the lead claimant roles, that's those on the shop floor, was 453 points. A score slightly higher on average than for the comparators, those in the distribution centres, who got 447. So claimants might ask, why are the distribution workers paid more? Many are members of the GMB union, which claims if Asda lose, it could mean a £1.2 billion compensation bill and £400 million every year in increased pay.
Why do you think that the women workers are paid less?
The entire retail sector has been built on the structural discrimination of women.
Asda said the report was part of a complex case and confidential, suggested jobs wouldn't be compared using averages and said the findings were not a ruling by the court. A spokesperson said, at Asda, male and female colleagues doing the same jobs in stores are paid the same, and this is equally true in our distribution centres. We continue to defend these claims because retail and distribution are very different sectors with their own distinct skill sets and rates of pay. But the leak suggests the claimant's lawyer thinks the report leans heavily in their favour. And if Asda were to lose, there could be an avalanche of claims across retail, according to an independent employment lawyer.
I really think this is the tip of the iceberg. There's a lot of claims against other supermarkets already out there, so they will be watching this really, really carefully. But I think it goes beyond supermarkets as well, because the ramifications could impact all sorts of sectors.
Jackie says women's pay was once seen as pocket money.
Not anymore. I have to go to work to keep the roof over my head.
I don't want my daughters to grow up saying to me, why wasn't I worth the same?
Michelle is a single mother of 4 with a disabled son. She says winning this case would be life-changing.
Anushka, do you think Asda is going to lose this?
Well, look, this case has some way to run. The equal value bit that I was focusing on will be heard by a tribunal next year. The report that we mentioned will be a big part of that case. Lawyers say a very significant part. But even if they lose at that stage, Asda could argue that there are material reasons why there is this pay disparity. They're also trying to push down the gender side of this somewhat. They point out a third of the claimants are men, and that is actually true. But Tom, you cannot have an equal pay case unless there is a claim of sex discrimination. And the key in this particular case is the fact that the better paid workers in the warehouses are predominantly male. Now, if Asda were to lose this case, then I've talked about the financial implications, but the implications are much broader than just Asda, as you were just hearing. These structures are replicated not only in other supermarkets, but also across large parts of retail. And that is why everyone's watching closely to see what happens.
OK, intriguing story. Thank you very much indeed. Now, the former SNP MP who took the train from London to Glasgow when she had COVID during pandemic travel restrictions has paid the price with her constituents. They have forced Margaret Ferrier out by agreeing to a by-election in Rutherglen and Hamilton West. She says she won't stand. The by-election will be the first test for the SNP's new leader, Humza Yousaf. It'll also be a chance for Labour to potentially reclaim a seat from the SNP.
The people of Rutherglen and Hamilton West have spoken, telling Margaret Ferrier her time is up as an MP here. This is a by-election 3 years in the making. Awaiting a COVID test result, Margaret Ferrier travelled to Westminster by train and was seen here speaking in the Commons.
For many months now, my constituents have been contacting me.
She tested positive, then travelled back to Scotland by train again, breaking lockdown rules and the law. She has served community service, but it's taken a recall petition and more than 10% of the voters signing it to remove her as an MP. Today we couldn't find anyone sorry to see her go.
She was representing the SNP and they put her out the party. She then became independent, but the people of Rutherglen didn't get a choice in that. Therefore, I honestly think the recall is a good idea.
Michelle and Sarah both lost their husbands during the pandemic. They're still furious at Ferrier.
It's just when I talk about it, how angry we've been, how hurted we've been.
So this by-election's personal for you?
Yes, really.
It is far from scientific, but from just the 10 people I spoke to here today, 8 said they hope this seat will move from SNP yellow to Labour red.
Have you decided how you're going to be voting in the by-election?
Probably Labour.
I think I'll go the SNP.
I'm not nailing my colour steady mast.
You're convincible. You realise after being on TV, the parties are going to be your door trying to win your vote now?
Quite possibly, yeah.
Both parties are already in campaign mode here. It is the first test at the ballot box for the SNP's new leader.
Yeah, Humza's been great. During the leadership campaign, he referred to himself as the first activist, and he has stuck true to his word. He's been out on the doorsteps.
Labour politicians are already calling this the most important Scottish by-election in a generation.
The people of this constituency have been without a voice for far too long. The earliest date they could hold it is the 5th of October, and I say bring it on.
Pressure is on both leaders. It would only take a 5% swing for Labour to take this seat back from the SNP.
This is a by-election that the Labour Party ought to win if they're going to demonstrate that they are indeed now enjoying something of revival north of the border.
Margaret Ferrier has refused our request for an interview, but in a statement tonight she told ITV News she will not be standing again in her old seat. She held on for as long as she could, but in the end her constituents have forced her out.
There will be a by-election here this autumn. Expect Labour and the SNP to throw everything they have at this, aiming for victory. Peter Smith, News at 10, Rutherglen.
As incessant rain continues to fall on the Chinese capital Beijing, the number of dead has been rising slowly but surely. So too is the level of water flooding parts of the city. Beijing simply hasn't been affected like this for years. It is not unusual for southern parts of China to experience extreme flooding, but there has been a record-breaking amount of rain in the north of the country around Beijing. State media reported that 11 people died and 27 are missing in the mountains to the west of the city centre. 9 other deaths have been reported in Hebei province, just outside Beijing, from where the city gets much of its food and many of its workers.
Flooding like this in China's capital is unheard of. So when people living in Beijing come face to face with the floods, they are quick to lift their phones and record its frightening power. It picked up the traffic in this suburb and sent it flowing down a brand new river. Flights were cancelled at this airport where waves lapped against the wheels of the planes. And from the top of this high-rise building, the view is now of a muddy downtown lake littered with so many ruined cars. Once the water has passed through, there's chaos and shock. The water surged into our street so quickly, says this man. He and his wife just managed to outrun it. A few feet above the torrent here, a family clambers off a roof into the safety of a digger's shovel. The Chinese government has yet to publish an official death toll or say how many people are missing, but around 120,000 people have been moved out of their homes, and the military's helicopters have been delivering essentials to places which have been cut off. A local government statement in Beijing today said the floods can destroy our cities, but not our determination to overcome them. That determination will soon be tested again. Another storm is on the way in this season of climate extremes. Geraint Vincent, News at 10.
Back here now, and in much better news, what a match it was for England in the Women's World Cup this lunchtime. They frankly blew away China 6-1 with a near-perfect display of skill and determination to reach the knockout stages. They'll now face Nigeria next Monday morning. 5 different England players scored. The rising superstar Lauren James got 2 and had another disallowed. As manager Serena Wiegman put it, she did special things today.
It may not be Wembley, but the Lionesses don't lack for support down under. All hoping the adventure stretches beyond today.
Come on, England!
China did pose a degree of jeopardy. In games between the teams, they have the better record. Serena Wiegman was forced to shuffle her pack again, introducing new faces and a new formation. If they were quick off the mark last time out, today they flew out of the blocks.
The Russo shot! It's not taken England long!
Alessia Russo finding her feet after just 3 minutes. Scoring has been England's Achilles heel recently, but that was about to change, and how. Millie Bright's no-nonsense intervention fed Lauren James, who set Lauren Hemp scampering towards England's second.
Fluent football from England is a brilliant finish as well.
And if that was a classy finish, then better was to come.
So much time!
China asleep, James making the tricky look so simple. Scored 1, a hand in 2 others. She's made the world of difference since being handed a starting role. Her big brother, also an England and Chelsea star, getting some good-natured trolling from the stands. China hit back with a penalty, but it wasn't long before England's superiority was restored. James again with yet another touch of genius. 4 soon became 5, defending from the playground, and substitute Chloe Kelly gratefully unwrapped the gift.
Mistake from Zhu at the back for China.
The rout continued, defender Rachel Daly getting in on the act, finishing like she was the top scorer in the Women's Super League, which,
yes!
despite her role here, she is, of course. There was an awful lot to love about what the Lionesses did today.
I said before the game we're going to do things a little different than we did before, and we did really well. That shows how adaptive this team is. And I think they're enjoying themselves on the pitch.
What dreams are made of. Happy for the team and everyone's buzzing, and yeah, we're looking forward to going into the next round.
So next up, Nigeria on Monday, when it will be win or go home. It's about to get even more nervy. Brace yourselves. Steve Scott, News at 10.
Because of the remoteness of the Orkney Islands, and sometimes, to be fair, the weather, the post doesn't always get through as quickly as it should. But that should be about to change. A couple of the islands are to get their own drone delivery service. The Royal Mail's first on a regular basis. The new type of island-hopping air mail will take letters and small parcels to the islands of Hoy and Graham say. They should get there a day earlier than by ferry to be delivered by the island's postmen and women. Now, let's return to the developing story tonight that we are expecting another indictment to be handed down against former US President Donald Trump. He's certainly expecting that himself. He is already facing 2 separate criminal charges. This one could be the most serious yet, attempting to block the transfer of power to Joe Biden in January 2021 with the storming of the US Capitol building. So let's go back to Dan in Washington. Dan, as we understand it, these charges are in fact being finalized right now.
Yeah, as I speak to you now, Tom, a federal grand jury is handing in a sealed indictment, we understand. This has not been revealed that it's Donald Trump at the centre of it, but frankly, it has to be. So I think in the next few minutes, we will get official confirmation of all of this from the Department of Justice Special Counsel Jack Smith, who will confirm the 3rd major criminal trial that Donald Trump will be facing. It will be interesting to see whether the Republicans now, the other candidates in this nomination battle, seek to put more distance between themselves and Donald Trump. They pointedly haven't so far on the whole. But you've just got to step back and take stock, really, of where we are. Here we are with charges from the former president of trying to overturn the result of the last election as he goes in to campaign in the next election. Even by the standards of Hollywood, I don't think you could have come up with a plot as far-fetched as this one. Yet that is exactly where we find ourselves this evening.
It is indeed. Dan, thank you very much. Now, finally, the German musician Felix Klieser likes to think of himself as a problem solver. The French horn player has had a few to solve before he makes his Royal Albert Hall and Proms debut tomorrow. But he says being born without arms is not one of them. To him, using his toes seems perfectly normal. As he told us, he likes to focus on the art of the possible.
Felix Klieser creates beautiful classical music in an unconventional way. The horn virtuoso was born without arms, instead relying on his toes to master the instrument. And though his contorted position may be painful for most, not for Felix.
It now looks incredibly comfortable. Is it that way? Of course, I think from when I see myself playing, then I'm already, sometimes I'm really surprised. It looks it looks very, very interesting. But for me, of course, it's my daily routine. It's a thing I do every day, and for me, it's a very relaxed position. So it's something I can spend, or it's a position where I can spend hours per day. It's not, the lips are getting tired, but never the feet.
At 4 years old, in his native Germany, Felix was oddly drawn towards the French horn, never letting his condition stand in the way.
When you grew up as a person without arms, then people are telling you all the things which is not possible. Playing the horn, going to school, it doesn't matter. And I'm a little bit tired of people telling me what is not possible. I love to think about more what is possible.
He's played around the world, recorded albums, and most recently had a 2-year residency with the Bournemouth Symphony Orchestra, with whom he'll make his Proms debut tomorrow evening.
I think it's a very special concert, and of course the Royal Albert Hall is a very iconic place for every musician, not just for classical musicians, for all musicians on this planet. And so I'm looking forward to play there, to perform there. I heard many, many things about it.
Felix takes his performances very seriously, but his downtime less so, documenting the life of his horn Alex in quirky Instagram posts.
It was a fun thing to think about, okay, what can an instrument do during the pandemic when it's not necessary to play concerts, and I was not practicing anymore, so I was not thinking about music and about the French horn. And so this was a point where Alex was born, and it's a funny thing.
At 32, he's constantly searching for new challenges that'll test him, excite him, but most importantly, bring him joy. Rishi Davda, News at 10.
What an inspiring guy. Now, we were joking this time last night about it being August and there not being much news, but look at tonight. Huge developments. Do follow it as it unfolds overnight on X and our website. Good night. Thanks for watching.